life can hit like a sledgehammer. But guess what? We hit back harder. Welcome to Affirm That Sh. Somehow I thrived. I'm Jennifer Rogers, your no BS guide to turning life's toughest moments into badass victories. Ready to flip the script? Let's affirm that life can be a bitch, but somehow we thrive. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Affirm That Sh. Today we have a very special guest with us, Lynn. Lynn's story is one of loss, rebirth, and continuation. Lynn is the mother who lost her son to suicide. But she didn't lose her world. She still had her husband. And with him, she leaned in love, she leaned in compassion, and together they continue on. Today, she leads her journey and assists others in their journey with compassion, calmness, and peace. The affirmations that we're going to share today, I invite you to take a breath, close your eyes if you're able, and repeat along with us. If you're not in a position that you can do that now, come back to Lynn's episode, subscribe, and listen again and again. This is one story that will change you and heal you. So let's settle in. Take a deep breath in. Hold and release. I give myself permission to grieve in my own time, in my own way. I give myself permission to grieve in my own time, in my own way. I give myself permission to grieve in my own time, in my own way. I honor my child and the love and life we shared. I honor my child and the love and life we shared. I honor my child and the love and life we shared. I smile, laugh, and feel joy without guilt or shame. I smile, laugh, and feel joy without guilt or shame. I smile, laugh, and feel joy without guilt or shame. Right after this break, we'll hear Lynn's story.
Imagine a space where you let go, where the clamor of the world quiets and you meet your truest self. At Yukio, through sound vibrations, Reiki, and the wisdom of tarot, we help you release what no longer serves you, align with your energy, and renew your spirit. Begin your journey back to yourself today.
Hello, Lynn.
Hi, Jennifer.
How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Good to see you again.
It's good to see you. I just want to give a reminder to our listeners and viewers that you were a special guest panelist on our Christmas edition talking about grief. And you shared just a small portion of your story with us then. But today, we get to hear all about Lynn and what she's doing, where she's been, and how she is thriving.
Yes, and thank you again for the invitation to participate with that group of ladies on the panel. That was very enlightening. So Yes, my story, my grief story, as I talk about it today, began on actually, there was a prelude. It began on July 30th, excuse me, July 29th of 2019, because that's the day that my son, Daniel Brooks Lewis, did not show up for work at his fire station for his shift. And little did we know, I call it the prelude because that was the last time that anyone saw or heard from Daniel. And we didn't know his whereabouts until 6 days later on that Sunday, August 4th. The authorities from the police department and fire department showed up at our home, my husband and my home, to tell us that our son had been found in Charlotte, North Carolina, which was about 5 hours from where we lived in Richmond, Virginia. So that was the beginning of my journey that I'm on today. So a little bit about my Daniel. I called him my favorite man child, and he would often remind me that, Ma, he called me Ma, I'm your only child. I said, yeah, but you're my favorite. So that was just
Correct.
kind of a running thing that we had between us. But he was a professional firefighter, had been for 6 years at the time of his demise. He worked in actually in our home city of Richmond, Virginia, but he lived in about 45 minutes away in another city. And so we didn't see him, of course, every day. And then he worked a part time job, as many of them do. And because he was a young man, he was 30 at the time of his death. There was not a lot of phone call conversations. There were text messages, as you know, most people like to do these days. So um, it wasn't unusual that we didn't hear from him, every day. Sometimes, as I've looked back on it, probably maybe a week at a time. Or I would say, "Hey, Keith, have you talked to Daniel?" And if he had or heard from him, it was okay as long as he was keeping in touch and all of that good stuff. But he didn't report for work. It was a total shock to us. We don't know why he made that choice. As I've said before, and I'll say again today, he was dealing with a situation that he had gotten himself into, but appeared to have been dealing well with it. He was talking about it, doing what he needed to do to, manage it.
Hmm.
So we don't know why he made that final decision. Of course, as most often, there was no note left or anything like that. It just looked like he just went out and just he never came back. So that was that, which happened in August of 2019. So March of 2020, right as the pandemic was intruding into the world. Um, it was also would have been his 31st birthday. We were out of town actually meeting his two of his best fighter friends for lunch, and I was waiting for my husband to get ready for the day, and a thought came over me to the fact that, you know what, this is going to be a part of my life for the rest of my life. I cannot change it. I don't know why, eh, but I am going to not be consumed by what has happened. Instead of being consumed, I'm going to live, and not just live, not just survive. I am going to thrive in the aftermath of my son's tragic death. At the time, Jennifer, I had no idea what that might look like. I was dealing
Sure.
with grief brain. I didn't really know what I was saying, but I remember saying that to myself, writing it. And so to this day, I have remained true to that declaration that I made to myself. And I will say, while I have remained true to that declaration, I want your audience to be very clear that it has not been easy. There have been lots of ebbs and flows. There have been lots of of messy stuff. When I say messy, the blame, self blame. Why didn't I know? Why didn't we see? Why didn't his friends know? All of those kind of messy things have happened um, since that time. But as I said, I know um, he knows that he was loved. I know that he loved us. So I know that it didn't have anything to do with us personally. It was whatever was going on with him, whatever was going on between his ears. And he got to the point that he just, made that final decision that he couldn't handle it, choose not to handle it, whatever happened. Um, but back to me choosing to not just survive, but to thrive in the aftermath of my son's death. And as harsh as it sounds, choosing not to die with my son. As I have said before, and maybe even on our panel discussion, that as harsh as it sounds, I probably would have died for him if would have had to make the choice, but I had no desire to die after him. And so now what? So I went ahead and had therapy, individual therapy, did the group support therapy, which, you know, I advise anyone to try. And it's some people it doesn't work for them. It was good for me. And what I say to that is having a therapist or a support group is like having a doctor, a medical doctor. If you don't like that doctor, you go find another one. And so the same thing with a therapist. If you don't like that one, if you all are not clicking, if they're not listening, then, find another one. The hard part is you got to tell some of your story again. But guess what? When you go to a new doctor, you got to tell some of your story again. You got to fill out that paperwork. So, that's a suggestion that I make. I don't regret having done therapy, but there was still more. I kept thinking to myself, this grief is too heavy for me to carry by myself. I want to live. I want to move forward. And while I don't know, I'm not going to say what he would want for me, Daniel, that is, I believe that he would want me to move forward and not just stop living because he always told me that I was a phenomenal woman. And, he was always very supportive of all of the many things that I did, businesses I started, things that I thought of, the adventures that I came up with for us, the little mini trips and all of that stuff. But I think he would have wanted me to move forward. And like I said, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's my story and I'm sticking to it, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
but so now what does that look like? So it's been over 5 years now. I found grief coaching, had no idea that grief coaching existed, but I found that that was what I needed for myself. So I became a certified grief coach with from grief to gratitude grief coaching with Dora Carpenter out of Washington D.C. And but guess what? As soon as I finished that training and was positioning myself to start coaching other persons, um, it was the beginning of year 3 for me after his death, and I was stuck. I couldn't do it. I didn't. It was the worst year. It was the worst year thus far since my son's transition. Um, with the self doubt, with the anger, with all of the unanswered questions, with the woulda, coulda, shoulda, with the why, all of those things. And so much so that I really thought I was slipping into depression. And so I
Mhm.
hired a therapist for myself just to help myself. And in addition to dealing with his death, I was also dealing with, excuse me, my aging father who needed more attention at that time, my Asian mother-in-law who needed more attention at that time. And so what I found out, and then I was feeling kind of angry because I felt like, okay, this is my time. This is my time to really keep my thriving up another notch. And then I had to attend to them more. And
Mm.
but with my by the third therapist session, I told the therapist, I don't need you anymore. I'm good. And she said, no, you don't. You're just dealing with life's transitions. You're not depressed. And so that was really enlightening to me. I don't regret having had the therapist because she just helped me to see that this is just life. This is a part of the hard part. This is where you get to be uncomfortable. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And so what happened at that point, I went forward with how so what next, right? What next?
Mhm.
Again, this awful thing is never going to leave me. It's always going to be a part of my life. So several things happened. I did start coaching in one-on-one grief coaching. And let me just say right here, too, in case someone is wondering about grief coaching versus like therapy. So, grief coaching is okay, this has happened. I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm not going to change it, but I can move forward. And so it's for the persons, the people that have ready to make that choice to move forward. I'm focusing forward. What do I want my life to look like now? What can I do to move forward? So they just need that accountability partner, that someone to kind of help them map out what they would like for their life to look like now. So that's what I do as a coach, and it's not only helpful when I see my clients just light up and have that aha moments like, oh, I can do this. We even talk about how joy and sorrow can coexist in like the same space, um,
Mhm.
because you're never going to get over that sorrow, that sadness that the death caused. But while that's, I call it playing in the background, you can still experience joy. You can still experience, peace and love and all of those. But it's a choice, and I always talk about the choice. And I don't judge anyone if they choose not to move. That's them. But for me, it was too heavy for me to stay there. So therefore, I move, and I move with others who are ready to move as well. I started really practicing self love unapologetically, just being able to set boundaries, those healthy boundaries that keep me from overextending, also keep others from intruding too far into my space. Um, Practicing self love, teaching others how to practice self love unapologetically. Um, Training, always looking, I am a lifelong learner, so I'm always looking for ways to improve myself, help myself as well as help others. So last year, which would have been 2024, yes, I became a certified grief educator, which is similar to coaching, it's just broader, um, because I want to learn. And so my learning helps others as well as I help them. Um, so that is really what I'm doing right now. Oh, I did publish a journal last year in 24, and it's for the survivors of suicide loss. So it's a journal with prompts, with writing space, with space where you can put your pictures or mementos. It is a space for you to write letters or write notes. What else is it? There are, I don't call them quotes. And there's space
Mhm.
where you put affirmations. I know you're big on affirmations, but place where you put affirmations. And so it's just a place to keep your memories. And
Yeah.
I did it because as time has gone on, I found I have found little notes or cards that Daniel gave me, and I wanted a place to kind of put them all in one place. So that kind of for me sets my book apart. I also include resources, and it's not only for persons who have experienced the loss of a loved one, but it's for people who may be supporting someone, because we need to know how to support someone who has experienced a suicide loss as well. Um, I do many workshops, MINI workshops, about the stigma that's attached to suicide grief. Because I always say there's death and then there is death by suicide, which is like an extra layer because it has so much stigma. And um, so that's really my story. It is ever evolving. This
Mm.
year, I'm writing more, doing two more anthologies, two more, meaning I did one a few years ago where I told my story up to about 3 years in, but it's ever evolving. I will say, and this is especially for listeners who think, will I ever feel better? Will I ever, you know, will my mind ever get back to normal? Boy, I don't know what that normal is for you, but it's a new normal. And I hated saying that term early on in the midst of COVID, because everything we heard is the new normal, it's the new normal.
Right.
But truly, when you're talking about the death of a loved one, it's a new normal, because you gotta pivot and figure out, if you choose to figure out, how do I do this, without them, whomever it is that is no longer with you. Um, so yes, that many workshops about self-love, because I'm really really big on that, because it's important that we take care of ourselves anyway. But when you have grief added, and you just really need to pay attention to yourself, because you can find yourself being making yourself sick, especially if you
Mhm.
suppress your grief, or even if you some people don't suppress it, but they do things that like obsessive abusive things to themselves, whether it's drinking, whether it's smoking, whether it's, driving erratically, just doing things that normally they wouldn't do. So, but it's important that you take care of yourself, and really take care of yourself.
Lynn, you have given us some beautiful suggestions. I love your mention of your book, your guide to help us go through and adding those pictures. One thing that comes to mind for me is that, yes, while the families go through this as well, you have friends and coworkers that are experiencing this loss and at a different magnitude. You
Mhm.
know, if it's someone that you like, your son, his close friends with the fire department, and that takes time to recover as well. So, do you also assist coworkers and families as well, or is your target audience for coaching, are they more of close family?
Oh no, actually, my coaching is probably close family is the least, because in my case, my family does not. They don't really talk about it. But as far as other person's family, it has, mm, I would say, yes, it's been a couple of close family. The one closest was not a mother, it was a spouse. But so I work with, either I work with the family members. I am getting ready to get into doing more with the workplace, grief in the workplace, because, unfortunately, Jennifer, you think about, even with firefighters, they are close, because they work so closely together. They got to trust each other,
Mhm.
depend on each other. And so when of one of the family members leave, they got to keep taking care of us, taking care
Yes.
of society. So a lot of times they don't take the time to really grieve through their losses. And so
I
yeah, looking into doing that. Excuse me, working with an organization who is we talk about mental health awareness for first responders and their families. So doing some work with Operation Yellow Tape that's started locally in my area. Um, so yes.
it it's a very delicate subject, but it's one that needs to be said. It's one that needs to be shared. And there's not a better guest that I could have here with me today than for you to share your story, share how impactful this has been to you, and then what you've done with this to grow and heal and keep moving and thriving forward. So, as we wrap up our time together today, Lynn, I know again there are men, women, viewers, listeners that will want to reach out to you. Would you share how they can do that? And then we'll include it in your show notes as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I have a website. It's called Destined to Thrive Grief Coaching.com. And I'll say it again because it's rather lengthy. Destined to Thrive Grief Coaching. Email address is destined to thrive at outlook.com. I am on Instagram as Grief Coach Lynn. And I'm also on Facebook under my name, Lynn Lewis. If you're interested in checking out the journal memory book, it's on Amazon. If you just pull up my name, and it is my grief, no, excuse me, my suicide grief journal. I don't know what is
No.
with me in these long titles, but yes. So, and if you email me, just put something that I'll know is not trash, spam. So just
Right.
put, Jennifer Rogers podcast, or something that I'll know that it's okay to open the email. And I do respond to emails and phone calls and all of that stuff.
Well, thank you, Lynn, for your time today. And again, for sharing your story with us.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for entrusting your audience to me. I appreciate it.
You just took another step towards owning your story and thriving against all odds. This is Affirm That Sh. Somehow I thrived. If you're ready to keep kicking ass, subscribe now and let's keep breaking barriers together. Remember, life's a battle, but somehow you'll thrive.